You can start.
Dear participants and Jayantians, I would like to bring to your notice a few general instructions. Keep your microphone mute when you're not speaking. Also, enable the videos if only required. Don't get distracted by your mobile phones. Be active and make the session interactive. And finally, students, please maintain the Jayantian decorum. I quote, "When learning is purposeful, creativity blossoms. When creativity blossoms, thinking emanates. When thinking emanates, knowledge is fully lit. And when knowledge is lit, economy flourishes." Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. A very warm good morning to one and all present here. The most estimable resource person of the day, Dr. Badri Narayanan Gopalakrishnan, Lead Advisor and Head of Trade and Commerce, Niti Aayog, Dr. K. Vinoda Devi, Head of the Department of Economics, all the faculty members, participants of the webinar, and dear Jayantians. Every year, this is a time that every citizen in India eagerly looks forward to, as a new budget for the financial year is presented, which brings new promises and new hope for the Indian economy. Yesterday, on 1st February 2022, the Finance Minister of India, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman, presented the new Union Budget for the year 2022-23. Today, we have come together in this virtual platform for a special session to know more about the implication of the new Union Budget, organized by the Department of Economics, Kristu Jayanti College. A grateful and a prayerful heart is the beginning of all greatness. I call upon the department choir for the invocation.
From my heart, before even time began, my life was in His hands. He knows my name. He knows my every thought. He sees each tear that falls and hears me when I call. I have a Father. He calls me His own. He'll never leave me, no matter where I go. He knows my name. He knows my every thought. He sees each tear that falls and hears me when I call. He knows my name. He knows my every thought. He sees each tear that falls and hears me when I call. And hears me when I call.
Thank you, choir. Today, I'm extremely delighted to offer a hospitable welcome to this auspicious gathering. We have an esteemed resource person amidst us, Dr. Badri Narayanan Gopalakrishnan, Lead Advisor and Head of Trade and Commerce at Niti Aayog. Sir is here with us today to provide us with valuable insights on the implication of the Union Budget 2022. Thank you, sir, for taking out time for us from your busy schedule. It's indeed my privilege to welcome you on the behalf of the Department of Economics Kristu Jayanti College. I also take this opportunity to welcome Dr. K. Vinoda Devi, Head of the Department of Economics. She is our guiding light to knowledge and success. It's my privilege and honor to welcome you, ma'am. I also extend a cheerful welcome to the faculty members of the Department of Economics, the participants of today's webinar, and all the Jayantians. Once again, I welcome you all. It's time to present before this August gathering our chief guest of the day. I call upon Ms. Dia Susan John of second year BA JEE to introduce the chief guest. Over to you, Ms. Dia.
Dr. Badri Narayanan Gopal Krishnan is the lead advisor at NITI Aayog, Government of India, wherein he heads the vertical of trade and commerce. Prior to joining the Government of India, he has been an economist working to analyze a wide range of economics, disruptive technology, environmental energy, and public health policies. He has informed the process of decision making in several major economic policies such as free trade agreements, technology regulations, both through his academic research, consulting, and advisory projects. Dr. Badri Narayanan has also been a senior economist and affiliate professor with the University of Washington, Seattle, Senior Fellow with European Center for International Political Economy, Brussels, National Council for Applied Economic Research, and Center for Social and Economic Progress, New Delhi. He is on the board of directors of British American Business Council. He has also been a consultant with the UN, World Bank, ILO, FAO, WHO, IMF, and several other international organizations, as well as government and private bodies across the world. He has also been engaged with the startup community across the world as an advisor and co founder. He had founded a consulting firm named Infinite Sum Modeling in 2015, which has a global presence. He has been a consultant to several organizations such as McKinsey, KPMG, PwC, World Bank, UN, Harvard University, LSE, the Commonwealth Secretariat. He has published over 100 papers and 5 books and presented his work in 30 different countries across the world. It's indeed an honor for us to have such a reputed and prominent individual like you, sir. I once again welcome you to this webinar and invite to lead with the talk. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for inviting me. I will, right away get into the topic. This year's budget was quite important and in the context of recovery from COVID, as many of us saw in the economic survey, we have recovered quite a bit, and this year we are expecting a GDP growth of 9.2%. That is 2021-22, and the next year we have we are aiming at 8 to 8.5%. So that suggests that we have we have started growing again, and we are slowly reaching the pre-pandemic levels of GDP. So that's a very important thing that we already got from the economic survey. But then during in the budget, the main focus or main expectation from the budget was to make sure that the growth is taken forward and it sustains, and particularly focusing on the industrial growth, looking at the trade and commerce part of it. So there have been a lot of positive announcements with the Honorable Finance Minister. and I just wanted to highlight some of them. Uh, as you know, if you look at the speech of the Honorable Finance Minister, uh, she lays out three goals for this Amrit Kal. That is the time starting from now, which is the 75th year of independence, to the 100th year of independence, the centenary year. So we want economic growth with all-inclusive welfare. We want inclusive development. We don't want lopsided growth. Second, we want to promote technology-enabled development, energy transition, and climate action. So basically, sustainability, green economy, those kind of things. The third thing is virtual cycle starting from private investment, crowded in by public capital investment. This is a very important aspect, which again is very clearly considered in this budget. And particularly looking at this, the last aspect, public capital investment. I'm not getting into the numbers, but there is a huge increase in the capex, the capital expenditure by the government in a lot of infrastructure projects, and that's going to be very positive. And if you look at all the downturns in the global economy in different countries in the past, the main way to come out of it was the expenditure by the government. So government has to put in a lot of money so that we can come out of it. But what is unique in our government's approach, the current government's approach, is looking at this expenditure. We anyway have to spend on, we have to spend. The government has to spend to boost the economy, and that spending, they're just taking care that it is. It has a good return on investment, both in the shorter term and in the longer term. And many of the announcements made yesterday should be thought of not as short term, but medium to longer term. So a lot of them will show, a lot of these decisions have been made today, and the concrete results would start showing up now, but they'll continue to show up for many years to come. So it's many of the decisions, many of the discussion points are focused on the longer term. So in this regard, there are four priorities laid out by the Honorable Finance Minister. One is the PM Gati Shakti, which is about the infrastructure, inclusive development, then the productivity investment, productivity enhancement and investment, sunrise opportunities, energy transition, and climate action. So this is a combination of productivity and sustainability. Then financing of the investments. How do you finance the investments? So those are the four priorities. So of course, the when you look at the outlook itself, recovering and so on, is because of the generic economic resilience we have in the country. Industry is quite resilient, but also the government initiatives like vaccine coverage is right now 93% of adult population has got the first dose at least, and almost 70% has got the second dose as well. So that is a major positive. And if you also look at um, the capital expenditure has increased a lot by the government. So and one difficulty that the industry is facing now, more so in the developed countries, but less in India, is the inflation. I mean, in India also it's big, but it's not as big as in countries like US. So particularly if you look at the inflation, it is driven. It's more supply side. So the prices are increasing on the supply side, but the the demand side, the consumer prices are not increasing so much. So it's mostly the wholesale price inflation. And so that also means that you need more supply side interventions. And that is the context in which a lot of supply side actions have been taken. So if you look at the Gati Shakti, Prime Minister's Gati Shakti, so there are seven engines here. So we have road transportation, railways, airports, ports, mass transport, waterways, and logistic infrastructure. So we are aiming at a national master plan, which is looking at world-class modern infrastructure and logistics synergy. So now, if you think about the industrial growth, infrastructure is definitely a major component there. And many of the studies, many of the economic policy studies, if you look at from the academia and also policy research and corporates, one major constraint for not being able to, like for industry not being able to pick up in the context of India several years in the past was the infrastructure deficit. So the infrastructure is not well developed. So that is one major thing that the government is focusing on. Like 25,000 kilometers of national highways the coming year. These are all like very ambitious, but the track record of the government is that we have always achieved many of these targets, particularly when it comes to highways and many of the infrastructure projects. The targets have been achieved, and that is an important aspect. One thing that we at Niti Aayog had contributed was this multimodal logistics parks. So where you have all the different types of logistics interfaced in a single platform, allowing data exchange among all the mode operators. So there is some kind of integration and collaboration and cooperation among the different transportation mode operators. So there is open source mobility stack for seamless travel of passengers also. And also another thing is connecting postal and railways network. So that will help parcel movement easier. Of course, in addition to also connection between postal services with banks, so that you can have greater financial inclusion. And then there is, we had talked about one district, one product before, but now we are going deeper, one station, one product. So that's to get more and more local in terms of diversity of products being produced and specialization of different parts of the country. And also a lot of new trains have been announced when they Bharat trains, new generation 400 new generation trains made in India. That is going to give a big boost, because when you make trains, you are affecting the entire supply chain. Like you're going to buy a lot of parts, raw materials and so on, which are going to come from other industries. So these things have huge multiplier effects. And then you have all this. There's also like sustainable alternative to conventional roads, National Roadways Development Plan, and that's going to be very sustainable, and that's going to contribute to our achievement of the emission reduction targets. When you look at industry, we always think about manufacturing, but in my opinion, we should also think of agriculture to some extent, because some of the industries are based on agriculture. So like food processing, textiles, and so on. So agriculture, there are several major initiatives when it comes to agriculture. One thing is about natural farming, promoting natural farming. Second thing is post-harvest value addition, and also particularly focusing on consumption and branding of millet products. This is going to go a big way, because we somehow got tied up with rice and wheat as staple crops across India, but we had a huge diversity. Every different small part of India, small districts, or even smaller than that kind of geographical regions, they used to have consume different types of millets and different types of grains. So now that is going to be promoted and branded properly, so that you have diversity of food, and a lot of these are also healthy, and that's also going to add to the further value addition in the food processing sectors. So now the other thing is coming up with a bunch of modern technologies, like using artificial intelligence, machine learning, drones, blockchain, and all this high tech stuff to help the farmers to make good decisions, and help in terms of optimal use of inputs like water and fertilizers, pesticides, and so on. So this is going to help the agricultural sector, and also if you really see, the agricultural sector has actually done well despite the pandemic. This was the only sector that grew at a normal rate, like 4% plus or minus, despite the pandemic. Industry really fell a lot, but agriculture stayed resilient, strong. So there are also a lot of announcements on water projects, linking different rivers and so on. That also can go a long way when it comes to agriculture. And then there are a lot of welfare schemes, and a lot of schemes on digital sector, digital payments, and so on. So another aspect is MSME. So in terms of industry, MSME is the fundamental and most dominant part of industry in India. In fact, interestingly, that's the case even in many developed countries. I recently did a study on US and UK. Even there, MSME, mainly SME, small and medium enterprises, are major part of the economy. In India, it's also micro, small and medium enterprises are the backbone of the industry. So there we have announced, the finance minister announced things like interlinking of various portals that are helping the MSMEs, extending the credit guarantee scheme, and revamping the other kinds of credit guarantee mechanisms, particularly for the micro and small industries. And there is a new ramp program, raising and accelerating MSME performance. So these are all very important because MSMEs have been suffering a lot during the COVID, and also earlier with a lot of unique problems they're facing. So I think that's very important. It's very important to consider MSMEs. In terms of productivity enhancement and investment, there is a lot of set of initiatives there. Ease of doing business. There is going to be new set of things, 2.0, trust-based governance, and there are a lot of central government schemes and state government schemes, and lack of coordination between the two. So now we are going to have IT bridges to integrate them, and then there is going to be land parcel identification number for land records, and a lot of things to help the R&D. For example, defense R&D is going to be opened up to industry, startups, and academia. And 5G technology sector will come under the production linked initiative scheme, which by the way has been pretty impressive in the last year. We have done some analysis and found that they are doing really well. And if you also look at the ease of living part of it, there is also going to be this battery swapping policy for e-mobility, So that is a major thing because electric vehicles are becoming a reality now, and a lot of companies have been getting into that, and the government is also pretty serious there, and it's working on the infrastructure there as well. That's quite important. And also in terms of if you look at the uh, other kind of policy changes in terms of taxes and so on that are going to benefit the the industries. One thing is the some of the the industry related tax incentives and so on have been improved. So first of all, we're going to have tax relief to persons with disability. There is also going to be a reduction in on alternate minimum tax rate and searches for cooperatives, and increasing the tax reduction limit on employers' contribution to the pension NPS account of the state government employees, so that the state government and central government employees have the same treatment. And then also the the when you look at the trade part of it, the custom duty, a lot of progress has been made in this budget to reduce import duty for various inputs, like inputs for electronic components, electronics manufacturing, agricultural sectors, steel sector, uh, and shrimp and aquaculture, those kind of sectors, uh, and all these things, and for some other aspects, some other industries, there are also the tariffs also will continue to be high to help the domestic industry to grow. And the one thing that a lot of people are discussing about is the virtual assets tax of 30%. In fact, I would think of it as a very positive step, because now the government is recognizing the virtual assets like cryptocurrency and so on as assets, like cryptocurrency and so on are recognized as assets, and it is only fair to tax the returns on those assets. If you're making some money out of those assets, then you have to be taxed, so that they're they're becoming similar to all the other kinds of assets. So that gives them some kind of recognition. So I would think of it in that perspective. Um, and then this also, there is a lot of increase in allocation to the village roads, the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. The village roads have been increased, um, and, uh, and also the Atmanirbhar Bharat Rozgar Yojana, the employment scheme. For that also the budget has increased. If you look at the different ministries, I think the allocation has increased for many of them, and defense has particularly been increased a lot. And in defense, you may already notice that we have already begun to export defense equipment to other countries, like the recent deal for Philippines, which is a very new development. And in terms of a goal that the government the current government has of doubling exports in the next few years, I think many of these schemes, like production linked incentives, PLI, and this infrastructure development, reduction of transportation costs, the transaction costs, and so on. These are going to go a long way, and I think. And I talked so far mainly about how industrial growth can be facilitated by this the schemes and the budgetary allocation here. Um, and I also should talk about the a little bit about the other part of it, the sustainable, the people at large, development, those kind of things, because those are also important. Because only if you have welfare schemes that function well, you can actually have good demand in the economy, and then that can meet the supply. You can have a good match between supply and demand, and you can also export. So in that also there are a lot of schemes which are empowering the households, like aspirational districts, which is a very important scheme where our institution Niti Aayog is involved, and uh, so phenomenal work has been done there. So you identify these aspirational districts and rank them and incentivize them to improve their their key performance indicators where they're lagging behind other districts. So that's a wonderful scheme, and funding has been allocated to that, more funding. And also the water availability, Har Ghar Jal Se Jal, that also is, they have a target of 3.8 crore households to be covered in this year, financial year 2022-23. And also building houses, 80 lakh houses to be built in the coming year. And also there is also a focus on the regions that are less developed, particularly the northeastern part of India. So to fund, there is this PM Divine Fund on to fund infrastructure and social development based on the health needs of the northeastern part of India. Health is an important aspect, not only because of COVID, but also in general. Only if you have good health in the population, your wealth and other things also will be there. So this national digital health ecosystem is an amazing new system that's going to help in many ways to increase the efficiency of the health sector. There'll be this tele mental health program for quality counseling, which can go a long way because um, in the context of COVID, one major health issue, apart from the direct health effect of COVID itself, is the mental health. A lot of people get into depression and many such things, and there this tele mental health will be a great boon for people because a lot of people in India, particularly, we are still not used to going, taking treatment for mental health. We think of it as a untreatable issue. So that thing has to change, and it cannot change overnight. You cannot ask people to go and meet psychiatrists or meet the counselors today with all the difficulties in traveling and mobility and so on. So in this context, the tele-mental health program can go a long way so that the people can just dial the number and talk to people, talk to the counselors. They don't have to go anywhere. They don't have to take a lot of effort. And another thing is also integrated architecture, the energy, Mission Shakti, Anganwadi, and portion, nutrition. All these things are also part of the health related things. 2 lakh Anganwadis will be upgraded to what is called the Saksham Anganwadis, which are better. And skill development is another major aspect. Digital ecosystem for skilling and livelihood. Desh is a new e-portal that will be launched to promote online training. Startups also will be promoted to facilitate drone as a service. That's a great development because drones are going to be useful for many things. And in education, one very important thing is one class, one TV channel program that will be expanded to 200 TV channels. A lot of regional languages will be included there. and this is very important because if you really think about how smartphones penetrated the entire population, the main reason was the development of softwares that can help people type and read and listen in the local language. So that led to a huge disruption in terms of smartphones coming to every household in India. So now, taking cue from that, this virtual labs and all this skilling, this one class one TV program, expanding it into local languages will go a long way to promote the reach of education to people at large. So there will also be a digital university for with world class quality universal education, and this is a long thought idea because we have good quality professors and researchers in India. Why don't we have a digital university where people from across the world can learn and get degrees and so on here? So that's a great universalization of quality education. So we should think of India as a partner in skill development to other countries also. Not only we should not only focus on our own skill development, but we can be what we call as Vishwaguru. How can we help other countries? What we also call as soft power. By helping the other countries, we can develop our standing in the world. And also the potential and this announcement that RBI will come up with a digital rupee, a digital currency, is again a great development because if you take countries like China and others, they have already developed this they call sovereign digital currency, and they can really go a long way. Many things. One thing is just ease of transaction, the digital payments and so on will be easier. Secondly, the also the government transfer to the population will also improve a lot. It will be easy and easy to transact. And I think those are the main highlights that I wanted to focus on. These are the different aspects of the budget, which particularly are relevant for industrial growth. Of course, we don't know how much industrial growth can it result in. That is something that we have to wait and see. But at the moment, we can only look at the directional thing, like how will it do or not. From that point of view, we definitely look at it as a very positive budget, which is going to promote industrial growth in a big way, because it's addressing the foundation, the fundamentals. Not It's not trying to do any kind of superficial adjustment, like giving away a lot of subsidies to the industries and so on. But instead of that, it's focusing on the infrastructure development. And in fact, a long time ago, I did a study as a researcher, independent researcher, on looking at the subsidies going into, like export subsidies going into textile and apparel industry. And that was not WTO compliant. So we had a lot of pushback from many other countries, and the dispute settlement mechanism in WTO, where US filed a case against us, and many other countries did that, and we had to start reducing all these export subsidies because they are not WTO compliant. So now what the analysis we did was, okay, if you take these subsidies and instead put that money on infrastructure development, how would the industries benefit? And then we found that that can actually lead to a lot of productivity improvements, and that can be a game changer. So instead of giving money to the industries, why don't we put that money in developing roads, developing infrastructure, developing digital technologies and support system? Then you can see greater result in the ground on the industries. So I think that is the main take away from this budget. And I think it is, in the last year's budget also, we had a similar kind of broad approach where we focus on capital expenditure and put the money in the sectors, in the areas where there is a lot of return on investment. And of course, it's not about financial returns, it's about socio-economic returns. So put the money in places where you not only get a lot of financial returns, but also a lot of people get benefited. A lot of people get benefited out of it. A lot of industries get benefited out of it. So I think that is very important, and I'm very happy that Honorable Finance Minister has taken these into cognizance and come up with a very positive infrastructure focused budget. And again, in addition to infrastructure, as I mentioned, there are plenty of schemes, both development schemes and as I mentioned, like trade policy, tariff policies, tax policies, which are very positive in nature. So I think with that, I conclude my remarks, and I can answer any questions.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. We are really indeed honored to have heard such perceptive words from you. Thank you for sharing your valuable insights with us, sir. Now, the session is open for queries. If anyone has any questions, they can either unmute themselves or they can also type in their questions in the chat box.
Yeah, good morning, sir. Thank you for your fabulous, vision on 2022 budget. My query is that what should be the stand of the central government on disinvestment?
So I think disinvestment is a long pending process, and now there are a lot of progress being made, as Honorable Finance Minister also mentioned. Air India is done. Ispat, one of the steel companies, is now happening. LSE IPO is going to happen soon. So it's a very high priority for the government. And I think I see many positives in this investment. The first positive is that, of course, the immediate thing, the government immediately gets a lot of money that can fund the infrastructure projects, the development schemes, and so on. That is one thing. The second aspect is many of these public sector enterprises we are talking about, they can probably gain a lot of efficiency by being operated by private sector, or by the, like in the context of LIC, it's going to be shareholder. It's not actual, like some company taking over, but more shareholder. So there'll be some kind of discipline coming to the management. So they'll be answerable to the shareholders. So I think there are, in my opinion, there are sectors and segments where the government should be there, and there are sectors and segments where the private sector should dominate. And I think this the list of the NMP that you all might be familiar, National Monetization Plan. All these were very carefully crafted and chosen, so that these are only the segments that where the government cannot be very efficient, and the private sector can be more efficient. Obviously, very core things like defense has to be with the government, but defense procurement can be, some of the defense procurement can go to the private. But I mean, it has always been the case. Defense procurement has even been imported from other countries. Now, if we make it more open to the private sector, that's a good thing. So I think that distinction has to be there, and I think the government has has been doing a very careful study and careful work on this, and that's why it is taking a long time. But I think relatively speaking, it's happening faster now. All these years of waiting is gone, and now it is happening faster. And I think it's very positive. So we can have more efficient, you know, things happening in this public sector enterprises, and that will be very positive. So yeah, that's my broad answer to your question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Participants, please kindly note that the feedback form has been shared in the chat box. The link has been shared. Please kindly fill the feedback form. Sir, also there are a few more questions in the chat box. May I read out the questions for you, sir?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first question is, how the digitization efforts proposed by the budget 2022 will facilitate trade and commerce?
Yeah. The first thing is, if you look at the agricultural sector, a lot of digital initiatives in that sector, they are going to make our farmers more competitive in the global market, and that is going to be very positive. So we can get a lot of exports from that sector, agriculture. And second is the infrastructure. So use of digital technologies. I think I discussed about the multimodal coordination, how to coordinate between the different modes of transportation. So that is very important, and that can lead to more um, uh, more use of digital technologies in order to coordinate can go a long way. And that also can promote trade, because if you look at the trade, the hindrances to export, or the different factors that uh, make our costs very high. One of the major constraint is infrastructure, transportation, logistics, all these things. So the moment they are being streamlined using digital technologies, that can go a long way, and can lead to greater growth in trade and commerce. And uh, and there is also a role of things like artificial intelligence and so on, which can increase efficiency and reduce cost across the board in many industries, and that can actually lead to greater exports. And I also think that the digital industry itself, like India is a big exporter of IT services. So if the digital sector grows, our own IT exports also can grow a lot. So a digital sector is both an end in itself, because we are a major player in the digital sector globally, and it is also a means to other sectors, like I just explained. It can lead to positive growth in other sectors, increasing competitiveness and so on. So I think those are my broad points on digital initiatives.
So there are a few more questions. There's a question. Do you think the growth rate of 9.2% is achievable? What are the possible hindrances?
Yeah, I think the 9.2% is going to definitely it's going to be achievable, going by the numbers we got so far. We look at the quarterly numbers and so on. So we are very much in that zone. In terms of hindrances, even as the chief economic advisor, principal economic advisor mentioned a couple of days ago during the economic survey presentation, and also honorable finance minister mentioned, we just looking at what happened in the third wave, the Omicron wave. We are just being a little positive. We're thinking that okay, we are they're not going to face any major lockdowns from now. So I think that is the only hindrance. If something like the first wave happened, the first wave we were not affected that much health wise, but we had to take very strict steps, huge lockdown, and that led to a huge reduction in economic activity. The second wave was actually, really bad from a health point of view, and deaths and so on. But from an economic point of view, it was not a major issue because the revival was happening. So I think that is a main hindrance. If that is if some major disruption happens, then the growth target may not be met. And the smaller risk, I would say, is the inflation. So inflation is a big concern. But I think I'm saying it is a smaller risk because of a couple of reasons. One reason is that a lot of it is coming from supply chain, problems, and they are going to get gradually cleared over time, and so inflation will get tamed. Secondly, the Reserve Bank of India and also the other central banks in the world, they are also taking some initiatives, and that can also lead to some reduction of inflation. So I think we are not the inflation issue is important, but it's not like it's not going to be like a huge issue when it comes to growth. So those are my pointers on that.
So there's another question. Does this budget fulfills the dream of common man who is looking way forward to achieve their basic necessities like creation of employment and reduction in inflation?
Yes, I think when it comes to the dreams of common citizen or Aam Aadmi, that we, as we call them, I think a lot of basic necessities that I discussed, a lot of basic necessities, um, they are now being taken to a lot of the population. So there was a graph in economic survey, if you noticed, almost most of the states except 2-3 states, most of the Indian states now have more than 50% of the people have all the basic necessities, although even that is not very high, but we are growing. If you compare it with like a decade ago, it's much better. So that is a important thing, basic necessities. On the employment question, all these schemes, so we are focusing on the supply side push. We're focusing on this infrastructure development, production linked incentives, all these digital sectors. All these things are going to give a positive push to the industrial growth, since my discussion was mostly about industrial growth, right? And that is going to create jobs. So we cannot create jobs out of nowhere. So it has to come from structural development and growth. And that is what is the focus of this budget. So in that sense, it is doing that. Again, in terms of the inflation, as I mentioned before, the supply chain disruptions, those are the main reasons why you see this high inflation. And globally, there are a lot of things happening there, and that is where our focus on infrastructure, reduction of transportation costs, coordination between different modes of transportation, all these things are going to play a big role in also taming inflation, to reduce inflation. So I think that is also an important part of the story here. And also the another part of common man is also the MSMEs. And this budget has given explicit focus on MSMEs because they are the largest, also the largest employment generators. So you take care of MSMEs, you're also taking care of employment issue. So I think these are the different ways in which the budget is addressing the problems of common man, employment, inflation, all these things.
Thank you, sir. There is another question. How is taxation on cryptocurrency going to help Indian economy with a heavy 30% tax for the investors?
So this thing is very controversial, and different people have very different opinions, strong opinions. So what I think personally is that cryptocurrency should be thought of as a digital asset, right? Because why do you buy Bitcoin? Because you think that it's going to appreciate tomorrow. You're not buying Bitcoin because, like, for example, just if you think of Bitcoin as just a currency, then take rupee. Like, will you take rupee and keep it with you, thinking that, okay, tomorrow this 1 rupee will become 2 rupees. So let me keep it and save it. You're not going to do that. But you're doing that with cryptocurrency. That means that cryptocurrency is like real estate. So you have real estate, you buy real estate because you know that tomorrow it's going to increase. The price is going to increase. So now when you're buying real estate and you're selling it tomorrow, when you sell, you're going to pay the capital gains tax, right? You're going to pay the tax there. So that is what the government is doing, I feel. I think it's a very important and relevant thing. You should, we're not banning cryptocurrency. So that should be very clear here. So nobody is banning cryptocurrency. The cryptocurrency bill is still yet to be tabled, and that is a separate issue. But here what we are saying is we are treating digital assets similar to physical assets. And that's very important. I mean, it's important for two things. We are talking about inclusive development. So who is trading with cryptocurrency? That's going to be people who are relatively more educated, people who are knowledgeable, maybe people in the middle class, people in the richer class. Those are the ones who are going to do that. And if you look at the poorer part of the population, they're going to deal mostly with the physical assets, land, buildings, and so on, small houses, and so on. So now, if you're, let's say a poor farmer, he has a land and then he sells the land, and the land appreciates, let's say by, like, he bought it for 1 lakh and he sold it for, let's say, 1.5 lakhs. So now for that 50,000 rupees, he's going to pay taxes because that's appreciation. That's a capital gain, right? The land is a capital. When land appreciates, you have to pay the gain. Now take the same thing. Now a middle class guy, that farmer is a poor farmer. That 1 lakh landholding is all that he has, and that has become 1.5 lakhs, and then he has to still pay for that 50,000. Now you take a cryptocurrency investor, and for him that 1 lakh may be a relatively small pocket of investment, and now that 1 lakh becomes 1.5 lakhs. So now if this guy is not taxed and that poor farmer is taxed, it is unfair, right? So that is what it is. That is what it is all about. What we are doing is, so far there's no taxation, no nobody was looking at this digital assets, cryptocurrencies, and so on. And that, in my opinion, that created a kind of inequality and unfair treatment of the poor people who hold physical assets. And I mean, not only poor, or poor and rich people, everyone owns physical assets, and it's more like you're favoring one class of assets over the other class of assets, and that bias has to be corrected. And I feel like the government has done the right thing in correcting that. Now, of course, there is also another thing to the question of how can it help the economy. Obviously, you saw that the deficit now is increasing, and the government needs to also fund the deficit. It needs some revenue from somewhere, and this can serve to some extent, at least some money from this can also help it. But the main intention is to bring the digital assets to a level playing field with the physical assets, which is, in fact, in my opinion, it is also for the people who are into cryptocurrency. It is a positive thing for them in a way, because the government is saying that, okay, we are not going to ban you for now. You can, these are legit, these are legitimate. You keep doing this, just pay the taxes. So that's a very positive message, I feel. So I think it's an all in all a good step, personally speaking. I think it's people should not worry too much about that, because it's like the way previously, before GST came, or before a lot of our tax enforcements became stronger, a lot of people were not paying taxes, and obviously nobody would justify that. Not paying taxes is a bad thing. And now when the rules are becoming stricter and GST is more it brings everyone under the purview of taxation, formalization of economy happens. These are all good things for the economy as a whole, because it's very unfair if one person is paying taxes, another person is not paying taxes, right? So I think I would add this in that list of things, where an unfair treatment is corrected. So, and also a recognition, due recognition of these assets, cryptocurrency as an asset. So I think I think this is a good step, and I think I've given enough reasons to explain why it is so. It's a very logical step, I would think.
So there's another question. What is the present budget's role for medical services in India, considering the present situation of pandemic and all health issues?
Yeah, in fact, on pandemic, one reason why we are not facing as much difficulty as we had in the second wave. Uh, I think there are many reasons to that. One reason is the Omicron itself is mild, but that is not very scientifically proven. We don't know yet. It's just a conjecture. People say it is possible. It could be because we have very high vaccination rates. A lot of people are vaccinated, and also, a lot of people got antibodies and so on. But more importantly, apart from these two reasons, I think the health infrastructure within a short time we have developed a lot. Like there are so many, COVID facilities, and people are not panicking so much. There is enough infrastructure developed in a short time now. A lot of steps had been taken even before the budget. So now coming to the budget, I talked about this, national digital health portal and the mental health teleline. All these things are going to go a long way. These are not just some kind of platforms which will just lie there, but they can help millions of people, because a lot of health consultation, doctor consultations can happen virtually. You don't have to go to the doctor and do that. So that this digital health can be a great facilitator there. And also the healthcare spending or infrastructure spending also is pretty significant in this budget. So that's another aspect. So I think there is enough attention given to healthcare, rightly so, not only because of COVID now, but in the longer term. Like I did a study with McKinsey a few years ago, a couple of years ago, before joining the government, where we actually tried to quantify, if you invest in the healthcare infrastructure, how much can the economy gain? And that is tremendous. It's like you can gain up to like 5 to 10% of GDP you can gain just by investing in healthcare infrastructure. How? Because your population is more healthy, so it's more productive. People are going to now think about COVID times. A lot of people are working from home. We are sick sometimes. Sometimes we are sick and still working, so our productivity levels are low. But imagine if you're all healthy, then our productivity levels are going to be high. And even more importantly, when you have morbidities and people pass away and they die, you're losing a labor force. Unfortunately, I personally lost a lot of people who are too young to die during the pandemic, both all the three waves, all over the world, actually, not only in India, all over the world, I've seen people. So that's all, a lot of talent, lot of labor force, lot of productive labor has gone. So now if you have a good infrastructure, healthcare infrastructure, those things can be avoided. And you can I mean, I'm not only talking about COVID, I'm talking about all diseases. If you have good healthcare infrastructure, you'll have a healthy population, and that's positive. And the government recognizes that, and that is why they're also putting in a lot of investment in that.
Thank you so much, sir. I'll end with the last question. In your opinion, sir, what will be the expected shape of the economic recovery?
So I think I will not. It's very difficult to say that. The principal economic advisor, if some of you might have seen, he talked about a very difficult kind of W shape. So basically, it's like W, but without the second dip, basically. So but I personally think that it's not a universal thing. I think some contact intensive sectors are yet to recover fully, like tourism, hospitality and so on. So there it is like, I would say, still U-shaped, and we are still somewhere here below. But if you look at manufacturing, agriculture did not go down at all, as I already discussed. And manufacturing, manufacturing is very close to V. So we have come up quite a bit, and exports are record high now. So manufacturing sector is doing well. But yes, I think some of these tourism and transportation, those passenger transportation, those kind of sectors are still suffering. But it's more there. The government's role is relatively small there. The only role the government can play is to push for the whole economy to come back to normal. But what can we do when people are not traveling? Right? Only if people become more confident and the pandemic becomes better, then people will travel, tourism will happen, and so on. So I think that part is still a concern, but I think broadly in many other sectors, it is a V shape. Yes, what the principal economic advisor said was it's V, but there is a little bit of instead of going steep like this, there is a small flat, like a horizontal line here, and then it's going out. So probably if you combine all this, I think that's what you will get. Some sectors it's V, some sectors it's like U, and on K, yes, there is also K is also happening in some cases. You do have inequality also increasing, and that is why the government has focused a lot on the welfare schemes. All the welfare schemes are for that. So I think it's a mix of all these things. I wouldn't discard any of these curves. All these curves are happening. So that's why I think broadly at a macro level, I think what our principal economic advisor said made a lot of sense, because at a macro level, it's a mixed shape. It's a combination of V, U, and K.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for answering our questions. Participants, I would like to remind you once again that the link for the feedback form has been shared in the chat box. Please kindly fill the feedback form. Gratitude is a powerful catalyst for happiness. It's the spark that lights a fire of joy in our soul. I invite Ms. Kristu Johnson of third year BA EPS to propose the vote of thanks.
Thankfulness is the beginning of gratitude, and gratitude is the completion of thankfulness. A very good morning to one and all present here. As we come to the close of the budget lecture series, Implication of Union Budget 2022 on Industries and Trade, I deem it a great privilege and honor to propose the vote of thanks. On this day, where we experienced an unmatched insightfulness and profound delicacy, I thank Almighty for giving us such an erudite experience. I'm extremely privileged to thank our chief guest of the day, Dr. Badri Narayanan Gopalakrishnan, Lead Advisor and Head, Trade and Commerce, Niti Aayog, Government of India. Once again, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for leading us through such an enriching session for the current and future prospects on the implications of Budget 2022. We are indeed humbled by your esteemed presence, sir. Now, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Reverend Father Dr. Augustine George, Principal, Kristu Jayanti College, for being a constant beacon of light and putting in the best efforts to provide us with ample and most conducive learning environment. Thank you, Father. I would also like to thank Reverend Father Dijopi Thomas, Financial Administrator, Kristu Jayanti College, Reverend Father Emmanuel Piche, Director, Kristu Jayanti College of Law, Reverend Father Joshi Matthew, and Reverend Father Deepu Choi, and other management team for constantly mentoring us and molding us for excellence. I would also like to thank Dr. Aloysius Edward, Dean of Commerce and Management, for taking the lead and organizing this event. I would also like to thank Dr. K. Vinoda Devi, Head Department of Economics, for her unwavering support, guidance, and encouragement at all the point of time. I would also like to thank Professor Jahir Mukta, Faculty Coordinator for the event, and all the faculty members and students for their cooperation in making this event possible. Also, my heartfelt gratitude to technical team who have been paying attention to specific details. Once again, I take immense pleasure in extending an earnest thanks to each and everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristi. The session has now come to a close. The host can now end the meeting. Thank you all once again.